on the people being better. The apportionment that we chose was to try and strike a balance. I think Mark said it a couple of times. If you aren't being bettered, then the amount that you benefit and should pay for, if you live somewhere that's not getting sewer, is not 50-50. Now, it may not be 80-20 either, but that's where we struggled in that 75-25. The people that get the most benefit are the people that are getting sewer and never have to worry about their septic system again. This person that's not on sewer, again, is paying what we feel is their fair share of cost, because once sewer comes in, they're still paying for that on their tax bill and whatever. But their septic system could fail, and they could need to put in a $40,000 or $50,000 mounted system. So if you put them in the same category as the people that are being bettered, that's not fair. Okay? Somebody said fair is fair. Well, it's not fair to say your benefit is 50%, even if you're not getting sewer, and so is mine. So that's how we came down to the split, just so everyone knows.
Mike?
Mind if I turn my back to you guys? They could probably hear me better. Mike Prisco, 12 Bishop's Way. I'd like to make a suggestion that you look at this a little differently. Look at it from the fact of what happens if we don't do this project. And I'll give you an example, and it was brought up here tonight. We have septic systems at the middle school. We have one at the high school. We have one at Town Hall. If we don't do this project, well, we're going to still have to face those septic systems down the road. And those septic systems are not cheap. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't want to use my tax dollars to replace a septic system in this town to turn around and have to replace it again in 5 more years. That's not a good return on investment in this town, and I don't think we can afford to continue to keep doing that. We all faced this challenge just recently with the overrides. Right? It failed twice, 2 years. But sooner or later they can't fail anymore, because we can't have Mr. Balakonis emptying the trash barrels. That's not a good solution for this town either. So I really want people to really think about this. I know it's financially, it's never a good time. We've heard it over and over. But think about the cost of this town if you don't do this. Because guess what? Then we're going to emergency come out to the town and go, we just lost 2 septic systems. Your kids go to school in these schools, and we need to replace them now. You're going to have to give up that money out of your taxes, whether you like it or not. Now you're not going to have an option. At least tonight you have an opportunity to think about something. Take back to your residents and share it with them. This is for the better of the town. I'm going to be one of the people that don't get any betterment from it. But I know long term it's for the best interest of me, my family in this town. So I appreciate if everybody chooses to look at it a little bit differently.
Maybe we should have not built so many houses.
Yeah, right.
Excuse me, Steve Kazazza. I'm a member of the Water Commission here in North Reading. And one of the things that I was thinking of during the presentation that was very well thought out is our aquifers, our groundwater supply is in these areas, particularly on the western portion of the community. And I know we've spent a lot of money to invest in those water supplies, new treatment plants, what have you. And it's just a matter of time with the septic systems on the confined, controlled lots before we're going to run into a problem. And I think this solution is in the town's best interest, and especially for our water supply. Thank you.
Okay, who has not on the phone, gentlemen, with his hand up right there?
Larry Susi, 4 Alston Road. First question is on the 40 million. If I understood what you said before, then the long-term need is 0.35 million gallons per day. But then I think you said that there isn't enough capacity. You haven't identified enough capacity, and that you would have to maybe find some more going forward. And I think you mentioned maybe the Hillview or other places. Using that additional capacity would require, constructing additional force mains. Is that included in the 40 million? So So that, the 40 million is the long-term cost for this?
It was a great question, Fred.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was related to whether the costs in the plan, the $40 million that's been presented to you, include capacity for the furthest out properties, if I'm paraphrasing correctly. It's really a great question because, and the committee knows this, since we started in 2002, Gary, I think we've probably had somewhere well over 50 meetings to this point in time. We've spent time after time going through details. And the thing we've struggled with the most from the get-go in the planning work is trying to find the capacity to put the water back into the ground. Our initial thought when we started this whole process was we would like to do the things that were traditionally done with wastewater treatment, which is treat it and get it back in the river, get it out of town as quick as possible. The state some years ago decided that A, wasn't a good thing to do in general for the whole state, and B, in particular in the Ipswich River Basin, because of the level of stress that the Ipswich River Basin is in for water reasons, the state is heavily focused, with a lot of support from the Ipswich River Watershed Association and some of the other watershed groups, to try to build the base flows again in the river. And the way to get the base flows up in the river is to get water back into the ground, keep the groundwater levels up. The groundwater levels then indirectly recharge the river and keep the river flowing. Because we faced those problems, we were stuck looking at disposal sites within the town of North Reading. We actually have some really good news on the front of disposal sites, and you've seen a very abbreviated portion of the presentation. I don't know if you were privy to some of the more detailed ones. We started a couple of years ago doing some more detailed ones, but some of the more detailed ones, we talked about the specific sites and why we got them and how much they're worth. We have two great sites. We have the Berry site, which is already in hand by the town. The town has an easement on it and has a lot of groundwater discharge capacity on it. And we have the DPW site. The DPW site is a slightly less desirable site because of the separation of groundwater, but also has a good amount of groundwater discharge capacity. One of the problems is if you added those two sites together, you would have almost enough capacity to treat every single drop of water that the town needs to treat based on our plan, that 375,000 gallons a day. The problem is, as part of the development of the Berry site, the town had to give away over 100,000 gallons per day of capacity on that site. So essentially, by the time the state allows development of the Berry site, pretty much half the capacity of the JT Berry site for groundwater discharge has gone away, which leaves us wanting something on the order of 100,000 gallons a day more to get our total flow out there. Bring it back to the short answer to your question is, through those two sites, which we have completely in hand, and that's more than many, many towns have that are focusing on this, we have on the order of 2/3 of the capacity that we need. The third most important factor that we have is we have a fairly good level of confidence, not a commitment from them yet, but a fairly good level of confidence from the U.S. Postal Service that says that they will join our facility if and when we can get a facility up and running. They have a groundwater discharge system that's already permitted, already built, and already in place, which they have agreed, in principle at least, to allow us to use, which has the ability to discharge about 3 times as much water as they actually contribute to it. So right there, we gain a little bit more. We still need more capacity. The answer is, originally when we put together the $40 million budget, it included pipelines to get out to an additional site, which we viewed as the Hillview, and the groundwater discharge facilities necessary to put them in. Over time, we've lost some of that capacity that we had to build those pipelines because of inflation. As we've been waiting for the project, if anyone's been following the numbers, we actually haven't changed the numbers in about, I forget when the last time was, Mark, a year and a half? It pretty much last April was when we started going at these numbers. But because we haven't changed those numbers, we have lost some of that extra money we built in for those pipelines. Until we actually get a handle on what we can put in the ground at the Hillview, which we hope is enough with the balance of those other properties to give us the answer that we need, we won't know for sure exactly how much we're going to have to spend to get pipelines out there. But I can tell you this, right now there's enough money in there to build the pipeline getting out to the Hillview, because that pipeline will end up being parallel to many other sewers that we've actually already proposed to build. And because of that, we can put 2 pipes in 1 trench and we can actually build them fairly efficiently. As far as what it'll take to build the groundwater discharge capacity on the Hillview site, we're still looking, that's one of the issues we're still refining, and we're actually hoping to get out to the Hillview this summer and do some final planning so that when we come back in the fall, we'll have the exact answer to that question. But right now, I can't tell you. I wish I could tell you all good news. I can't tell you that, oh, yeah, it's all there. I would like there to be some more cash in there for that, but I don't want to tell you what a number is for it until we actually look and see if it's feasible. Once we do that, we'll come back with a plan that says, this is where all the flow is going to go, this is how it's going to get allocated, and this is where the money's going to be.
That leads into another second question, if I can. This is a wastewater master plan. Is it available yet that people can look at? Could you send out a electronic copy of this that people can review?
That's a great question, and I appreciate
We can't,
that. Larry's question is, as part of the planning process that the town has done, there's actually a written document that gets assembled. And that written document is actually a pretty beefy document. It's probably going to end up being 3 or 4 inches thick with a lot of detail, a lot of maps, a lot of tables, and a lot of appendices to it. That document needs to be available to you to look at. We don't have it for you to look at right now. One of the reasons is, and the committee knows this, is because we've been waiting for these final number things to be checked out so that we can finalize the last chapter. We're still, in this room today, we're still trying to write one of the last chapters of that report. Several sections of that report have been shared with DEP. The final two chapters of that report have not. As soon as these decisions that you've got in front of you are made, we expect over the next month and a half or so, the DPW forces first will get a chance to review the draft report. Once they're comfortable with it, normally it would be released to the wastewater planning committee. And typically, after we get the committee's input, we would release it to the public. In this case, as a matter of time, if we have a couple of concerned citizens like yourself that want to put a level of detail into the review, we could certainly consider after the DPW review is done, releasing it directly to you while the committee looks at it.
Well, what we will do is, once the document is available, we'll have it put up on the town website in a PDF form. So it'll be available to anyone that wants to go to the website.
And would there be an opportunity before the town votes on this to review the document and provide comments?
Yeah, I guess we didn't really put it up on the screen, Mark, but our plan right now is to do some educational work over the summer, including get some of this information out there in writing, as well as have some information on the website. But we intend to have a public meeting, a very in-depth public meeting with more than just you folks, with a bigger, significantly bigger group, probably at the Hillview, I think we said. And at that point in time, go over a lot of detailed questions. I mean, the real intent of this meeting was to get the selectmen's comfort level with the hearing process and to make a few decisions financially. The goal of that meeting will be to talk in very much in depth with that. So that would be a great time if you have a chance. We can get you the report available to you and get a chance to review it. We can talk in much more detail at that point in time.
Okay, who hasn't had an opportunity? Gentleman in the back of the hat.
I am George Cangiano. I live at One Shore Road. I mean no disrespect, because I know this took a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of energy. But it's getting very difficult to be a middle-class family and survive in North Reading. Taxes go up. Taxes go up every year. Fees go up every year. We're paying $4 a gallon. We're figuring out how we're going to put gas in our vehicles to go to work. So 2 things. And by the way, I have a $20,000 septic system that's probably going to last me forever. I'm not going to benefit from this. But first, I think you need to rethink your split. Instead of 80-20, at least make it 50-50. And I hear the words community, and it's come up several times. Economic growth, having all these commercial businesses come in. And on your last slide, it says we're all in this together. Don't make Martin's Pond and these people be financial scapegoats.
Gentleman in the front.
Scott Medical, Burrows Road. Can we see that slide which has all the breakdowns for the septic systems? There was a slide there, it had what it was going to cost us, the percentages. Yeah, where's the one, there's a maintenance discharge fee, $500 a year. And this $500 a year, it adds up over a period of 20 years. Okay, it's...
That's forever. That
and it never ends. And you're asking